So what are the best Easter egg steps in the history of Call of Duty Zombies? Well, I guess I'm going to be sharing with you guys what I think they are, but also I'd love to hear what you guys think are some of the best steps in Call of Duty Zombies Easter eggs history by leaving them down in the comments. But regardless, this video is kind of a part 2 to a video that I had already made of the worst Easter egg steps, which will be linked on screen if you guys missed that one. But as for how this one's going to work and kind of the rules for this is that we are not going to count boss fights because that would be cheating and they would end up on this list a lot. And also we are talking about steps that have to be done in order to complete a main Easter egg. So if it's a side Easter egg that has a really cool step but it's not required for an Easter egg, it's sadly not going to count. But with all that said, let's not waste any more time and jump right into this list. Shang's Eclipse step. Now, I know that this one really isn't significant in terms of gameplay because all you really have to do is have 4 players interact with some buttons right close to them, which you know is not the craziest thing in the world. But what I really care about more in this step specifically is not the gameplay, but the visuals that come along with this, because when you do this, the whole visual look of the map changes. It went from being this really jungle, I guess, humid, middle of the day look of the map to now being in an eclipse mode where you have the sun completely blocked off by a moon or something. I'm not really sure how Shang really works because of a bunch of different things. Doesn't really matter though, but either way, just seeing how the map fundamentally changes, how it looks, and also being adding in things to the map that weren't originally there, like a whole freaking asteroid crash into the top of the pyramid thing like that is just so cool. Malward or Toten secret room step. Now, similar to Shang's step, it's not really about the gameplay here, because all you really have to do is bring Klaus to go punch some brick wall and the bricks fall, then you have to get the wonder weapon of the right variant and shoot it, and then you melt the metal wall that had replaced that brick wall. But what was really interesting to me is what happens after, because after you melt this wall, you now have access to one of the coolest secret rooms in the history of Call of Duty Zombies, which is a whole lab that was hidden under Berlin since the Second World War, and this lab looks insane. I mean, it just looks so futuristic, and not to mention there's a whole giant freaking portal to the dark ether, and if that's not cool, I don't know what is. Dreisendrache's Keeper step. Now, the Keeper step I'm talking about is, of course, where the Keeper is a ghost form. It stops at a bunch of different locations around the map, and you have to fill up souls using the correct bow in the circle next to it. And the gameplay is fine, it's fun, it does its job, but kind of like a similar theme to the previous ones and probably a lot of other ones I'm going to mention in the future. What really does it for me is what happens after you complete that step, because after you complete that step, the Keeper is now no longer a ghost, but in its proper physical form. And what it does is go to where there was once the zero gravity pyramid, and it goes there, and then your screen turns white, but instead of the old pyramid is replaced with the MPD. And I remember for myself, when I first saw this, I was absolutely mind blown. The MPD from Moon is now here, and it just fits so well with this map because of all the ties it had to Moon and the story that I was saying and all the audio that you heard, and more importantly, just to see one of the most iconic things in Zombies return once more to this map was just absolutely mind-blowing. Moon's MPD opening step. So without this step, the previous step mentioned on this list probably wouldn't be nearly as significant, because this is why the MPD is so freaking significant. Because while you are doing the Moon Easter egg, one thing that happens while you're doing it is that you fill up all the soul jars on all the 4 corners, and when you do that, the pyramid then opens, and there we see Samantha. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't around the community at the time when this was first solved, so I don't know exactly how crazy the reactions everyone had to this was, but I imagine it was insane. And honestly, till this day, especially when you play on the Zombies Chronicles version of this map, it is still one of the coolest visuals you'll ever see in Zombies. Dr. Toten's escort step, or the final step of the Easter egg. And as for this step in terms of gameplay, again, it's just like the gameplay is fine here. You're just surviving in a tight area, and every now and then you have to fill up a soul box. But what's really cool to me is that when you activate this step, the entire map changes. Once it was just a frozen barren land somewhere in Siberia, but now instead it is covered in lava and it looks completely different. And it's just one of the coolest visual changes to a map because of an Easter egg step that you've done ever. And what makes it even cooler is that after you complete the step, the map stays that way. The map is still covered in lava. And kind of a little bit more significant is that now there's no more zombies spawning, which kind of fits the theme of this map being the final map in the Ether storyline, telling us that zombies are gone. Moon Samantha Says step. Now I know this step happens twice during this Easter egg, but I am really talking about the second time, obviously. But this time, unlike previous ones, I actually think the gameplay of this is really cool. I mean, playing Simon Says with all this is just something that I think is just super iconic to zombies, and anytime it pops up again in the future, people absolutely love it, myself included. But again, what is more significant, more than the gameplay here, is actually the visuals, because what happens after we complete Samantha Says for the second time and also throw Gersh if I said it, is of course the most iconic scene in the history of Call of Duty Zombies, when we blow up the Earth and create the fan-loved map Transit. Of course, one of the greatest moments ever in Call of Duty Zombies. The Rising Drake's Wisp Step. So the Wisp Step is a nice fun step. I think it does its job. It's one of the funner steps. I know that normally I wouldn't like steps where you have to go look at locations around the map and make sure you have to find the right one, shoot the thing. Like, there's steps like that that were repeated in the future that were really bad, but this one was done well because there wasn't a ton of locations it couldn't repeat and they couldn't do stuff like that. So I think it was a fine step. But as the story goes with all these steps so far, is that it's not really the step itself, but what happens after you complete that step. Because when you complete this step in the Rising Drake, what you do is enter into the teleporter and travel back in time, where you see Gersh talking to Richtofen and them discussing things, but more importantly is where you learn how to do different things and kind of time travel here and affect the future. Not only do you take things from the past into the future, which is crazy on its own, but also you could see the password that Gersh puts into the safe that you need access to, and that's how we find out the password, by going back in time and kind of just peeking over Gersh's shoulder, which is still crazy to me till this day. Mob of the Dead's final step. As the final step in Mob of the Dead is something that we really haven't ever seen like something like this since then, and it's just crazy to say that, because what happens here, as I'm sure you are all familiar with, is that based on which character you are, if you are Weasel or the other three, you will now be on the side of the zombies or not, which of course the other three characters, Billy, Cell, and Finn, are not on the sides of zombies, whereas the Weasel now is, and now you have to fight between each other. Now I know there's some ways that people just absolutely cheese this, like if the Weasel has the death machine, especially Pack-Punch could just insta-kill everyone on the map, but as long as no one's cheesing this is one of the funnest steps that you'll ever have in Call of Duty Zombies. And unlike a lot of other steps that we've actually talked about during this, it's actually one of the first that actually I really like, just because of the gameplay and not because of something else besides that. Don't get me wrong, the whole theming and everything is just really cool. The story of this is also really cool, but it's mainly the gameplay here why I like it so much. Zetsubo no Shima's Spider Boss. Now, I did say that there were no boss fights included, but I don't really count this as a boss fight, even though it's probably more difficult than the actual boss fight on this map, but I don't care if you consider it cheating, I don't. Regardless though, the spider boss fight is one of the coolest things that we've ever got in Zombies. It's just so cool that one of the steps to just upgrade the wonder weapon on this map requires you to do a mini boss fight, and it is just so cool. It's not very difficult compared to actual boss fights, minus this map's boss fight obviously, but it's still just very visually cool seeing the giant spider that you have to fight, and it's just cool. I don't really know what else to say. It's incredibly fun to do. It never gets old no matter how many times you play. It is just clearly one of the best steps in the history of Call of Duty Zombies. And this brings us to number 1, and what do I think the best step in the history of Call of Duty Zombies is? Well, it's actually one that maybe will be surprising, probably not though, but it's actually on Ancient Evil, and it's a step called Hit Your Marks. This step is my favorite, and I absolutely love this step so much. It's like Treyarch looked back at the sharpshooter step that so many people hated on Buried, and they said, you know what? We may have got it wrong there, but we could still get this right, and that's exactly what they did with this. Oh my gosh, is this step just so cool on every level, whether it be the gameplay that you're actually doing, having to use the gauntlets that you have in your game, making sure everybody in your game gets it correct, and you just have to shoot it with the correct charge that you have, of course, based on your different wonder weapon that you're using. That changes, and it just kind of changes based on that, which I love that it's unique to the wonder weapon based on what you have to do. That is amazing on its own, but on top of that, I just love the absolute vibe of this. The music that plays, the whole scenery that you're doing it in this kind of auditorium is just so cool, and there's literally no problems with this step, and by far it is my favorite Easter egg of all time.